Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching Married at First Sight. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I've been a couples therapist and a professor of couples therapy for the past 20 plus years. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face as I watch this show.
You're on the brink of starting new and more communication, but with all the things that have transpired, it might not be the best for us to try to continue. With that being said, I would like to get a divorce.
I'm over all of this.
Okay, that's tough to watch. It's a tough moment for the two of them, and the experts are clearly disappointed. I think that it could have worked out. It's sad to me because I think it could have worked out if some therapist were there with them 2 or 3 times a week for an hour. I think that they could have turned it around. Leaving them to their own devices, Brandon clearly has some sort of reactivity, probably related to trauma. He was kind of aware of those issues. He took responsibility for it, at least in the beginning of the season. And as time wore on, I think he just lost faith in Taylor's love for him and care for him. They ended up continuing to trigger each other. And I think Taylor and Brandon in the beginning were really trying to work it out. They really, were trying to make the marriage work in the first week or so. But then I think once things turned a corner, I don't think either one of them were in it. I'm surprised they even dragged it out until the end of the season. I would have thought that the two of them would have threw in the towel weeks ago. So, it's to be expected. I hope that both of them actually get therapy, either individually or couples therapy in their next relationship, because their issues are likely to manifest in future relationships. And they could do a lot of help for themselves by getting help with that. But, it's sad to see.
Your own culpability in this thing. And I'm hoping you're not saying that you're blameless or that you don't recognize the weight or the gravity of the untruths and how they affect the relationship. You do understand that.
I do. Trust and vulnerability are really big things. And if I don't feel like I can trust you, then it's very hard for me to move. And so I think that has been the challenge throughout, is getting beyond the initial kind of disagreement of what that looked like for me, and then being able to find a way forward to let her in.
Okay, so he often talks in intellectual terms. I think he developed that defense early in life. And he is saying underneath this intellectual, jargonese sort of way of talking that it's hard for him to trust. And he's admitted that his issues with his mom, putting him up for adoption, was a big wound for him with regards to trusting people. And then we also heard from his sister that he was bullied or ostracized as a young kid moving from school to school, I think. And he developed this defense of trying to impress everyone by exaggerating and lying. I suspect he also has a compulsive pathological pleasing mechanism that ends up being lies. He's trying to please, but in his overemphasis of pleasing, he actually lies in the process. He thinks that he really wants to please his wife by saying, I earn a lot of money, I'm going to be a good husband. But meanwhile, he's lying the whole time. So that's the way it came across to me. And so he's saying that when he doesn't trust, it's hard for him to open up. And, I think he seems to recognize that. I really do hope he gets therapy for everything that he has talked about on this show. I don't think that his relationship, whether it's with Mika or otherwise, is going to go very well if he doesn't heal. I think he's somewhat aware, so I think that is good. But awareness only takes us so far. I think he deserves to heal from his abandonment or bullying or whatever, so that he can really, really internally trust other people so he doesn't have the impulse to lie or exaggerate. But, so this couple has had a lot of ups and downs, and when they make up, they seem to really make up. They seem to be genuinely making up. When Brandon and Taylor made up, it always felt like, I don't really think they're really making up. I think they're just maybe doing it for the sake of the show to go to the end of the season. But Mika and Michael, when they would make up, they would really make up, and Mika would really understand. So I could see this going either way. I could see either one of them saying no, but I could see both of them saying yes. So let's watch and see.
Like the mistakes I made, the fact that I was accountable for not necessarily being the most honest, the fact that I necessarily didn't feel comfortable all the way through, and that how that showed up and contributed to me not wanting to be honest and not wanting to divulge information and wanting to keep things to myself. Like, it's hard to admit that you have not done everything right, and it's hard to admit that you've made several mistakes. A just man can fall 7 times. It's not the fact that he fell 7 times, it's the fact that he can get back up, get back in line, and keep trying. Every week, despite my mistakes and all the things I did wrong, that's what I kept doing. I kept getting back in line.
That's great. It's great to acknowledge that, and he should be commended for that. He did seemingly get back in line and try. But as I always say in these shows, that white knuckling it is not going to work. And he and Brandon both talked about how they just have to be better. They just have to not do it in the future. That never works. Willpower never works in situations like that. You have to go to therapy. You have to heal from your past. The overwhelming impulse that informed the deceptions of the past and the exaggerations of the past is not going to go away. And the fact that you were deceiving in the past, Michael, is not evidence of a lack of willpower in the past. It was evidence of an overwhelming terror of being abandoned or being bullied that resulted in the behavior that ends up shooting yourself in the foot. Willpower had nothing to do with it. It's not like you had no willpower in the past, and now that you have resolve, you're going to change things in the future. People do this with addiction. They have a gambling problem and they lose a bunch of money and they just, okay, I'm just not going to do it again. I'm just not going to do it again. That never works. Or it works 1% of the time. Let's just put it that way. Very rarely does willpower alone work. In fact, I might even say it never works. Usually if someone says, if they have a big problem with gambling, for example, or meth or alcohol, and they say, I'm never going to do it again. And then somehow, and sometimes you'll hear people say that. It's like, I cured myself of my addiction without going to AA, without doing 12-step, without ever going to a therapist. When you look at actually what they did in the moment where they actually did attain sobriety long-term, they probably put a lot of systems in place that actually alleviated the need for willpower. So for Michael, I really hope that he gets therapy and healing for his past so that he doesn't need willpower. So I don't know. Let's see what happens, but maybe they'll stick it out. We still haven't found out yet.
The past 8 weeks have been extremely challenging. It's the hardest relationship that I've ever been in. I think the past 2 days I did see some of the progress that I needed to see in order to consider, still being in a marriage. But I think for me overall, there's just been way too much deception. There's so many things that I'm unsure about. I still don't feel like I know who my husband is. I still don't know who he is as a person. And honestly, I don't know how much of what he's told me is true and how much of it is not true. So for that reason, I do want a divorce.
Wow. Looks like Michael is truly hurt by that. And, I can't say that I blame Mika. Everyone's entitled to their own decision when it comes to that. It's a very personal decision. And she is deciding that she wants a divorce. And okay, cut your losses, look for a better match. Say, you know what, he keeps saying he's going to change the lying behavior and he keeps doing it. I see the writing on the wall. This is probably not going to change anytime soon. And it's just too rough on me, and I just don't want to deal with that. There might be other reasons, too, that she doesn't put forth, like maybe she's not attracted to him, or she just doesn't feel like his personality is what she's looking for. Who knows? But, okay, well, let's see how Michael takes it.
I came into this process as open and honest as I could be, to stay married and to find somebody that you all thought I could build a long-lasting partnership with. And I think we have gone on a really incredible journey to do that, despite some challenges and some setbacks.
So, as is typical, I think, to his defensive structure, he's relying on intellectualization. It comes across, I'm guessing, as if he's kind of lecturing, not lecturing like top down, but like he's just giving a speech to unnamed people. You know, he doesn't have eye contact with anyone. He's looking down and he's just saying a bunch of words. I think that is an attempt to hide or even deny his own pain in this situation. I suspect that he feels a tremendous amount of pain. He says his central issue is being abandoned by his mom, and this is probably touching on that. So I feel for him.
So for me, I don't believe in divorce.
Okay, I don't know what he means by that. You don't have to believe in it for it to happen. It sounds like she wants it to happen, so it's going to happen.
It's disappointing.
Yeah, that's what I thought he meant by it. It's just he's basically saying that he was not ready to divorce and he doesn't want a divorce. And he says it's very disappointing. Yeah, I'm guessing he's quite hurt.
We're, of course, sorry to hear that the marriage is not going to go on.
My hope for the two of you is that you will eventually find peace with this decision, and that will allow you to open up going forward, because I think it could hinder you.
I wish that the experts were there with them more often to help them with their conflict in a way that actually resembled therapy, one. Two, I also wish the experts would apologize, because they're the ones who set these people up. You know, according to their expert, quote-unquote scientific method, they're the ones that match these people up. And instead of blaming them or something, I think they should, at the very least, if I was one of those experts, I would feel very bad for playing a part in the pain that these two have been through. Now, I don't know if I'd blame myself entirely, because I'd say, well, how was I going to know that this guy was going to exaggerate often and deceive often? How was I going to know that? He didn't fill out any questionnaires saying that he does that sort of thing. So, I gave it my best guess, and there you go. But at the same time, I would feel bad, because those experts were the ones that set them up and the pain that they went through. Now, that assumes that a better match would have resulted in less pain. Who knows? There's no way to know at this point. That would be my impulse. Now, maybe the producers tell the experts, don't apologize, because that's not our brand. I don't know. But that's one thing I would say.
To not choose to be vulnerable, to not choose to learn a new skill set to pull from in your new relationships.
Choose? Do you think Michael chose his defense mechanisms? Does anyone choose their defense mechanisms? Does anyone choose their emotional reactivity? Does anyone choose their trauma? Does anyone choose the reactivity that they have due to the fact that they were mistreated growing up?
We had high hopes. I know you had high hopes, and those hopes were not realized. However, I want you to understand that even though your marriage didn't survive, your value is not based on the success of this relationship.
Now, before I get negative comments, I want to be clear. I'm absolutely holding every adult responsible for choosing the behavior that they did. But the way she worded it was that he refused to choose. And that is just not I believe, an accurate way of looking at these situations. You could indict Michael for choosing not to go to therapy, because that's going to help him. I might say, Michael, you have issues. Why haven't you been to therapy? He probably actually is pretty close to a lot of therapists, since he works, I think, with needy kids or kids with behavioral issues, if I remember right. I'm not sure. He at least works with kids. There's often therapists involved occasionally. But to say that he's choosing his defensive structure. Now, he is responsible for his behavior. Every adult is. But I'm here to tell you that people don't choose to shoot themselves in the foot. People don't choose to ruin their marriages. They are usually reactive from wounds that they're either unaware of or they haven't had a chance to heal from. And it just happens. It happens every day, all the time. Something like half of marriages end in divorce. Does half of the population choose to ruin their marriage? I have a hard time narrativizing life like that. Certainly some people, I'm guessing, we could frame, they made a choice, ongoing, like a conscious, volitional, willpower-based choice to ruin one's marriage. Most people are trying, and I believe Michael was trying. He was choosing to try. But the overwhelming nature of his issues of the past, I think, compelled his, like I said, his over-pleasing, which actually comes across and is actually lying to other people. His terror of disapproval and terror of abandonment causes him to resort to a habitual defense of lying and deception. So, I wouldn't frame that as a choice. I would frame that as a continuation of the mistreatment that he was going through, a sort of residual effect. In the same way that I will give the example of you're teaching your daughter how to ride a bike at the age of 8 and she falls down, and you run up to her and she's hurt and she's scared and she yells at you and says, "I can't believe you did that to me. You let go of the bike." Would you say to that 8-year-old, they chose to yell at you and to be abusive to you when it didn't make any sense, when they were the one that fell off the bike? Would you say that they chose to be a jerk face in that moment? Well, yes, they did choose. They made the choices to say those words, but they were in such pain and they were in such fear that it was hard for them to think straight. It was hard for them to remember how to act well to other people. All of us can understand that. So why not extend that understanding to someone like Michael? There's a certain delusion that we have that adults are somehow completely different from children. And I'm here to tell you they're not. Adults and children have the same emotional issues. I worry about Michael, honestly. I hope he's doing well now. I realize this was probably filmed a long time ago. After this is all said and done, I'm going to email, or I'm going to Google him and see if anything, maybe even maybe he has an Instagram. We live in a world now where I can actually just communicate, and I have often. Sometimes they reach out to me. A couple times I've reached out to them just to see how they're doing, really. And maybe I'll reach out to him, see how he's doing. I hope he's doing okay.
My hope for the two of you is that you will eventually find peace with this decision, and that will allow you to open up going forward, because I think it could hinder you to not choose to be vulnerable, to not choose to learn a new skill set to pull from in your new relationships.
Okay, well, maybe I was being a little harsh, because I guess one could interpret her words to say this is really to the two of them, and it's like she's trying to be nice by warning them and saying, unless you have some major changes in the way that you think, feel, and behave, this is likely to repeat itself. And that's what she's meaning by choosing a new skill set. And maybe she's even implying that they should go to therapy. Do they ever suggest that to these people? Because she's the therapist. It seems like that would be on her mind. Like, hey, by the way, you could go to therapy. Let's see if she says that.
We had high hopes. I know you had high hopes, and those hopes were not realized. However, I want you to understand that even though your marriage didn't survive, your value is not based on the success of this relationship. We had high hopes. I know you had high hopes.
Oh, he is a marriage counselor. I didn't know that. I thought he was just a pastor. And I do realize there are many pastoral marriage counselors out there. I think in previous episodes I said something like Pastor Cal isn't a therapist, but it looks like now I wonder what marriage counselor means. Does that mean that he actually went through clinical training, or that he just calls himself a marriage counselor? Because sometimes people will do that. I don't know that, but maybe there are pastors who actually have a clinical degree. Anyway.
Hopes, and those hopes were not realized. However, I want you to understand that even though your marriage didn't survive, your value is not based on the success of this relationship.
So that's a good message. Just like, okay, didn't go well, but your intrinsic value isn't harmed by the fact that this didn't work out. You shouldn't shame yourself. You shouldn't feel terrible about yourself because this didn't work out. It's a good message.
Clearly there were mistakes that were made on my part and things I need to own up to. And I felt like I had been accountable and was accountable.
This is decision day. So, Katie and Derek, do you want to stay married or do you want to get a divorce?
Wow. So I could see this going either way. I could absolutely see Katie saying, no, he's not in love with me. I don't feel the spark. He doesn't feel the spark with me. I don't feel the spark with him. So I don't see how that's going to work. I think both of them really value the spark and they both don't have it. They are friendly with each other and have had intimacy, but they don't really have that infatuation, love feeling, it seems. So it's going to be a surprise if both of them say that they don't want a divorce. I would imagine that at least one of them, if not both of them, are going to say, you know what, amicable breakup here. We gave it our best shot. I would like to stay friends, but I think we're better off continuing to look for that special someone.
There's been lots of things about this marriage that I've really just grown to love that I didn't think I would, but it's just been awesome. But there's also been some challenges. I feel like there's this little imaginary wall in between us and we're just on separate sides of the spectrum. But I want to stay married with you. Because I do believe I can fall in love with you.
Okay.
So yeah, well, that's surprising, I think, from him. But I guess it's pretty consistent with what he's been doing up until this point. He's been willing to see. Now, I would be surprised if Katie also said she was wanting to move forward.
I feel like we have really been lacking with our emotional connection. And, you know, part of me just really feels like my heart is like not in it, and I wish it was at this point, but I'm not ready to give up yet. So I would like to stay married.
Wow, that's surprising. So maybe they're both thinking, well, we could always get divorced in a year from now, and maybe things will get even better as time goes on when we get rid of the cameras. Maybe that's what they're thinking. I bet you at least one of them is thinking that. I bet you one of them is thinking, if not both of them, is thinking, well, let's get rid of the cameras. Let's start settling into regular life, and let's reevaluate in 6 months because there's enough here to not want to throw it all away without really making sure. Let's give it 6 months. I might regret looking back that I didn't give it another 6 to 12 months. Maybe that's what they're thinking, because they both seem pretty ambivalent about the relationship. So that's interesting.
It seems as though from every step that you were constantly resistant to doing what married people do.
You know, I think it goes back for me, and I just didn't realize how strong and how solid these walls and how guarded I was when it came to things don't go my way within a relationship, and I can't feel any passion or drive, that those walls aren't going anywhere, no matter how hard I try.
Okay, for one of the first times, he is speaking in a way that I'm not confused by. That from the beginning, when the relationship wasn't going his way, meaning that he wasn't fully into the relationship, he is now reflecting back and saying, I had no idea how bad my walls would be, how stubborn. There was a part, it sounds like he's saying there's a part of me that actually wanted to experiment and see if I could get a spark going with Mindy. But looking back, I realized that I put up big walls when things aren't going my way. Let's listen back to that.
You know, I think it goes back for me, and I just didn't realize how strong and how solid these walls and how guarded I was when it came to things don't go my way within a relationship, and I can't feel any passion or drive, that those walls aren't going anywhere, no matter how hard I try. And that just happened at every turn because I was missing so much from the beginning. I genuinely didn't know what to do. And I look back and that was a huge mistake on my part to not at least put myself in that apartment and show her our private time was very valued, and I would admit that up and down all day.
So for the first time, he is speaking in a clear manner, which is totally in line with what he has been saying in this moment, which is that he wasn't attracted to her at first and he put up the walls, and that was very indicative of the way he was coming across. Now, the whole lying thing and the whole emotional infidelity with her friend is a whole other thing. Maybe we'll get to that too. But he was putting up these walls, and that really did seem like that. When people would ask him things, he just had this either blank look or he would talk in very confusing ways. And that from one narrative, it's like, well, he's choosing to do that. Another narrative is that he puts up those walls, some sort of defense mechanism learned early in life, and it basically becomes impossible for people to actually break through their own walls. Walls are sometimes involuntary, and walls can look like confusing conversations. They can look like withdrawal and blankness. And right now, this is the first time we've seen him be kind of alive in the way that he talks. And so it seems like the walls are down now because he's free. And I'm guessing that the walls actually made it so that he said, I don't want to live with her. He was putting up a wall even for that. Maybe even his behavior with her friend was another wall that he's like, well, I'm going to be with this other person and we're going to have this flirtation. That's another wall that I'm putting up all these walls between me and Mindy. That's interesting. Let's listen back to what he just said there, because I'm just so happy because this is the first time that he's speaking clearly ever on the show, and I've always been curious as to what is going on with him, and now we have an answer, which is great.
I genuinely didn't know what to do, and I look back and that was a huge mistake on my part to not at least put myself in that apartment and show her our private time was very valued, and I would admit that up and down all day. I really do wish I would have taken even the slightest different approach. I feel like you've came into my life for a reason, and I didn't handle that well. I wish I would have done things very differently, because I think they would have been different.
So it's interesting. Now I have more questions for Zach of just like, okay, tell us more. Why do you do this to yourself? Why did you develop those defenses? What's going on there? Why did you have a seemingly romantic affair with her friend? What was going on there? Was that part of the walls?
Knowing what I have to offer to women, to people in general, and to you. And again, I'm sorry that it came to this,
So now they're playing the comical music, and they're playing clips of the experts kind of rolling their eyes because he said the phrase, knowing what I have to offer to women. That is a weird way of putting it. I think what he's trying to say is knowing what potential that I have in terms of being a good husband and being mutual with someone. I think that's what he's trying to say. But it is kind of a Freudian slip to say something like, knowing what I have to offer women. And that's why they're playing the comical music. I wonder if anyone's going to pounce on him because he said that. Because that is the narrative that I think they're trying to portray on this show, is that he only came on this show because he was trying to get fame and that he is extremely stuck up. I don't know if we know that much about him to say that. Who knows? But let's see what happens here.
That week coming out of commitment, again, I vocalized, especially to them, how wrong I was and how good it felt when we spent private time together and being just proven wrong and wishing I did that just before. Regardless of where we stood, it felt bad to see that so late and, so much damage, to a sense has been done, But from a vulnerability standpoint, from where my walls went up, I did learn a lot from you. And you did prove me wrong in a lot of areas when I was just simply able to spend time with you.
So I don't know why they're playing the comical music. I think that he is being different than he was before, and I think he is taking full responsibility. I wish he would kind of lay it on a little thicker and say, Mindy, I am so sorry that I hurt your feelings, and I'm so sorry that I went behind your back and talked with your friend. And I'm so sorry that I made you feel rejected and awful. And I wish I could take it all back, something along those lines. He's doing a half measure apology, which is, in the right direction. It's certainly more vulnerability than we've seen from him ever in this show. I think Mindy, from the beginning, has been mostly differentiated about her own pain. She has, when she's at her best, she just says, you know what, it just hurts. It just hurts to have your husband not be attracted to you and not want to spend time with you, not want to live with you. It just hurts. And so I'm guessing she's going to continue with that healthy perspective that it just hurts.
I'm glad this has been a learning experience for you, because I think that in the future you need to learn how to treat people a lot better. I feel like deciding to separate from Zach was the best thing that I could have done. And ever since that day, I just feel like a huge weight is lifted off me, and I'm just in such a better place. This marriage, like I did put everything that I had into it, but it just was not good for me.
Yeah, at the end of this season, I just feel really bad for Mindy. She really was in it to win it, and right from the start, it was clear that he was not in it and that he wasn't attracted to her. He said that repeatedly, and you just feel bad for her. She seems like a great person. Who knows, maybe after this, she's already in another relationship with someone who she deserves. I hope she's doing okay now.
Well, thank you both. I mean, this is not what we wanted, not what you wanted. And the only thing we can hope is that you will find a way to a better future, a better marriage, more love.
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle, in which I watched the full season of this show. It's been really quite a journey on this season. I feel like I've been through so many ups and downs personally as I watch this. I've learned a lot about these people. I feel like I know them. And it's all because you, the viewer, asked me to watch this show. Now, I'm guessing there's a tell-all, so I guess we'll watch that as well. But anyway, thanks for joining me, and please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.